volunteers though for our opening act. Anybody? You get to read from a script, so it's not like there's no pressure.
I'll do it.
1, 2. Anybody else? Do one more.
Good, well played, well played.
Okay, cool. So we're gonna go back here to the guest room real quick. You guys can hang out, get some more tea, eat some more s'mores, treats. We'll be back in just a couple minutes.
Think your friends and sponsors.
Sorry, we'll pretend you didn't see me fall up the stairs. Because it takes a special kind to do that. So did you find something on the web to apply for?
Well, I saw several things, but which the stuff that's obvious that they need somebody who knows what they're doing. But there was one, I'm trying to remember what it was, that I felt I should apply for. I have to find my resume. I know it's in my desk somewhere. But I just haven't had to use one in 12 years. So, but I remember I used it whenever I got this job. I got one, so I tried to have it in the desk somewhere. Did I keep
Updated, tell Brian what position you're applying for. Tell you like the keywords to understand. He said, I don't think because when we went to apply, we have to find that kind of help us. We really said, I don't think they were kind of walking in. But at least to get to the words and to see what they're looking for, how to word your background so that they can push it aside.
Right.
And it's funny because when we apply, our friends have Google. We apply for Google. And how many picked that up? So, they're laughing. Are you wanting to do something right away? Or you're just kind of
Pretty much, well, I want to see what's out there. It's not something I want to, I want to make a change this year. Because it's kind of funny. I heard a gentleman come into the office earlier this week from Healy and Eastern Chevrolet, taking a management position at Clarksville Poultry. And he said that, I could see the ship sinking. He said, I'm not going to getting out. And I thought to myself, well, I'm kind of in the same boat as he said. Unfortunately, with our company, it was done great for 30 years. But the guy that started it, he's really getting up there in age and he suffered a massive heart attack like 3 years ago. And his son ever since then is supposed to be coming in, taking over everything.
Oh, good.
He can't run anything. And I'm just sidelined to be a part of that when they can. And I hate it because I mean, it's, like I said, I feel like, when I walk away, I just feel like 12 years.
Here's a quick round of applause for your actors and actresses, ladies and gentlemen.
we heard you laughing, we're scared.
On their return, the apostles told him all that they had done, and he took them and drew apart to a town called Bethsaida. When the crowds learned it, they followed him, and he welcomed them and spoke to them of the kingdom of God and cured those who had need of healing. Now the day began to wear away, and the 12 came to him and said,
Send the crowd away to go to the surrounding villages and the countryside, to find lodging and get provisions. For we are here in a desolate place.
You give them something to eat.
We have no more than 5 loaves and 2 fish, unless we are to go and buy food for all these people.
for there were about 5,000 men.
We'll have them sit down in groups of about 50 each.
And taking the 5 loaves and the 2 fish, he looked up to heaven and said a blessing over them. Then he broke the loaves and gave them to the disciples to set before the crowd. And they all ate and were satisfied. And what was left over was picked up, 12 baskets of broken pieces. Now it happened that as he was praying alone, the disciples were with him, and he asked them,
Who do the crowd say that I am?
John the Baptist,
But others say Elijah or one of the prophets of old has risen.
But who do you say that I am?
the Christ of God.
and he strictly charged and commanded them to tell this to no one, saying,
The Son of Man must suffer many things, and be rejected by the elders and chief priests and scribes, and be killed, and on the 3rd day be raised. If anyone would come after me, let him deny himself, take up his cross daily, and follow me. For whoever would save his life will lose it, but whoever loses his life for my sake will find it. For what does it profit a man if he gains the whole world and loses himself? For whoever is ashamed of me and my words, of him will the Son of Man be ashamed, when he comes in glory, in the glory of the Father and of the holy angels. But I tell you truly, there are some standing here today who will not taste death until they see the kingdom of God. So, quick question. Has anyone ever had someone ask them to follow them somewhere that they did not want to go, or that they were unsure of? What was that like?
It probably would have just been, I'm being lazy and don't want to go, and you're making me go, or something along those lines.
Yeah, it's different feelings. One time it could be, a little hesitant because I'm scared, nervous, and then other times like I'm just angry and don't want to go. I'm stubbornly angry and pout the whole time. That's very rare.
I can think of a few times when I was younger, hanging out with the kids in the neighborhood, and they want to go like mess around with the old abandoned house they found in the woods. They're like, "Come on, everybody's going." And I'm like, I don't. Mom said, but okay, and willing to make that sacrifice to think, if my mom catches me back there, is it worth what's going to happen? So just that immediately came to mind when I was thinking of that question, thinking about it, that I didn't really want to go. Peer pressure's the worst.
Yeah, I can't say that I really thought about the consequences. Like, quite literally, like a friend invited me over to so-and-so's house. And I'm like, well, I really don't want to go. Like, being younger, I guess I never really saw past, the consequences of being on the other side. It's kind of given in.
I think I'd probably say no, just because I want to know all the details before I commit. Because I want to be in control. I want to know what I'm getting myself into. And if it's a bunch of people that I don't know, I'm not into it. I like smaller settings and people I know.
So Peter and disciple number 2.
The other guy.
Nobody else was named in the passage, so I didn't really know. I could have just picked one, I guess. But we're with Jesus when he fed the 5,000 and witnessed that miracle firsthand. Bread just multiplying out of thin air, essentially, bread and fish. And so what's interesting to me is right after that, Jesus goes off to pray, and then they kind of come back to him and they're talking, and he tells them for the very first time, oh, by the way, this whole following me thing, you need to be willing to risk your life in order to follow me. And that's the first time that they heard that. And most disciples of any rabbi during that time would not have considered their lives to be threatened in any way, shape, or form. And so, how do you think you guys would have felt in that moment? Having been following this guy for so long, and then he goes, oh, by the way, this could lead to death. You need to be prepared for that. Kind of shocked me a little bit. I'm like, whoa, am I really in this thing? You know.
Yeah, do I really believe what I said? And that's the question. Are you really Christ? I would definitely question that, and then I would start thinking about what brought me to that decision. You know, I just saw a miracle before my eyes, and then other teachings he talked about. I'd reassure myself after I started thinking about it.
Anybody else have any thoughts?
I think that's the point where you kind of sift out the people that are not true believers, that they don't believe in, and just kind of following him because his signs and wonders, and it was just kind of neat to see him perform miracles, rather than really understanding the true coolness of it all. So, if there were really miracles and right reasons, then yeah, it might have caught them by surprise, but it was, where would we really in? Our soul. And if they weren't, those were the disciples that kind of, their own way, like, yeah, I'm with you, just not quite there. Everything but that.
Well, and Jesus knew. I mean, he saw into your heart. He questioned a few of them. I forget which one that he said you're going to deny me 3 times before the roaster.
It was you.
Me. You know, so even then, Peter had some doubt right up until the end. I think he did have some doubt himself. But obviously, what he did after Christ's resurrection proved that he obviously had no doubt afterwards, because he was ultimately conquered.
I think it definitely caused some hesitation. You definitely have to sit and rethink. Oh, I didn't know that. I don't know how I'd react to that.
Yeah.
It would definitely be. If you didn't think that was how serious it was, and then you find out that all of a sudden it was definitely
Yeah.
I was hoping I'd be like, cool, okay. I'm scared, but okay.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. And so we did that activity to help kind of get you oriented to the passage we'll be reading today. It was kind of that last half of the act. But the reality is that is still happening in other parts of the world, where Jesus is saying, deny yourself, take your cross, follow me. It could lead to death, and it very well could lead to death for a lot of people in Eastern Asian countries or in Middle Eastern countries. And so people are still getting asked that question. And so our purpose here today is kind of look at that and go, okay, that's not necessarily us in America, though. So how does this fit into our context? What does that look like for us in a very real way? And how can we kind of apply that to our lives? Because currently, yeah, I think we would all agree that none of us are in immediate danger when it comes to our faith. But who knows, 30 years from now, something crazy happens. It very well could be a reality for us. You never know. Hope that does not happen. However, you just never know. And so I think we still need, though, to weigh that in our hearts and minds and really figure out what that looks like for us. Because if and when the time comes, we may have to seriously answer that question. You know? And so we're going to kind of talk about that a little bit today. And it's just a tiny bit of background into the passage. At this point, like I mentioned right afterward, that was the first time that they had heard Jesus say that. And so everybody at this point who's following Jesus and who considers him the Son of God and the Messiah is still thinking that he's coming as a political leader, that he's going to take some sort of physical charge of the world. You know? And so this is really his first confession, saying, it's not going to end the way that you think it's going to end. And so up until this point, everybody's following him because he's doing miracles, and they think he's going to be this great political leader. And he's like, guys, it doesn't end with me winning an election. This ends with me on the cross, and likely you on a cross, and you on a cross. Are you still willing to follow me? Do you still believe what you claim you believe? And so you can only imagine Peter, you know, when he says, of course, Lord, I'm not going to deny you. And then he does 3 times because he's freaking out. It's reality, you know. It happens. And so Jesus is like, I told you were going to do that. But so that's the background, and they now also have some substance to belief in just a little bit, because not too long ago, King Herod had beheaded John the Baptist. And so they knew that this was starting to lead down a very violent road, because they were seeing other people get persecuted and killed for their beliefs. And John, admittedly, was kind of crazy. They talk about how crazy he was, but King Herod had found John and killed him, and so they have this understanding, okay, well, they were cousins, so something could very likely happen here. And so they kind of had that precedent that people were getting killed for their faith, but it didn't match up with what the king at the time wanted. And so it was starting to become very real to them. And so before we dive into the scripture, I want us to do one more quick activity that's going to kind of help, I think, our mindset later when we have to make some decisions. And so it will just get us thinking about some things. So we are going to speed date. Yes, even though we're all married. But not in your typical like straight row kind of way. We're just going to get up and then find a new partner and ask some questions. But what we're going to do is everybody go ahead and stand up just a little bit.
I've never speed dated.
Really? I used to do this with my college students all the time during camp, and they absolutely loved it because they're all single college kids. You know, so
Are
like,
you speed dating like girls and guys? Just like
no, yeah, with
just speed dating.
everybody is available
Okay.
at this point. So what I'll do is I'll go ahead. Everybody find a partner. What I'm gonna do is ask a question.
Then we have to switch. So that's
Yeah.
switch.
I mean,
Well, we're gonna keep switching.
Oh,
We
okay.
gotta
So
get
you're good.
everyone anyway.
Yeah. So when I ask the
So I can
question,
date my husband.
yeah, you can date your husband right now. We're gonna have about 15 seconds per person to answer the question. So it's like the first things that come to your mind, okay? And then when I say stop, we're gonna switch and you're gonna go find a new partner. At some point, you may talk to somebody you've already talked to. That's perfectly okay because they're all different questions every time. So everybody got it?
Yes, sir.
Cool. All right. Question number 1. Name 2 or 3 of your most favorite activities. Go.
Playing cards and shooting.
running,
Running
and
and napping.
and like crafting, doing something like
Yeah, running and napping.
craft thing.
Do you have a third one? I'm gonna go with
Yoga,
you.
reading,
Um,
and being outdoors, traveling.
Okay.
travel.
Forgot about reading.
Eating.
I have time to think
Oh,
about it.
eating raw.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I was just copying you.
Cooking.
All right. Question number. Oh, sorry. Find a new partner.
Okay.
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 You can date me. All right. Name the 3 people that you consider the closest to you.
My husband, my brother, and my kids.
Family, really, yeah.
Scuba in a weird sort of way. Like if I were ever in a crisis situation, you're not going to fear people.
Yeah.
My fur baby, so I don't have.
And
I'll like to revise my answer.
You said your girls?
I heard that. Revise my answer. Let me think about that again.
do you want to revise your answer?
I
Okay.
can't
All
think
right.
of it.
Stop. Everybody good? All right. Find a new partner. Somebody you haven't spoken to yet.
I just keep walking this way, right?
Okay. Name your 2 most precious possessions.
What?
My
Wedding ring. I'll go ahead and clear that one out for everybody. Wedding ring.
Oh, right.
You didn't even have her originally.
I know, that's why it's like.
I think
Yeah.
about like what I would want to run for this, you know, like if I had a chance to grab something to the house. Too much prized possessions?
I hate
Well,
saying
there is
that.
a
Probably
photo
my ring
album,
in my phone.
right?
What was that?
Photo album.
I have to send.
Yeah, like photos, like group photos. So probably my laptop. Probably my laptop then, because that was all my photos.
That's true.
Okay, that's good.
I think this is a good thing that I don't put that much value into something. I'm just gonna claim that.
Sad but true.
The opposite is, the opposite is
In case
that.
anyone, yeah.
I think I would run
We had
right for a go to.
I know,
Kids are
really
not in the
are.
house already, maybe.
Yeah. It's like photos of John. So
Yeah.
You don't really want to have a
It's
conversation with me.
really
That's why I would-
Yep.
Yeah.
For whatever reason, they're
Because of that. like,
Yeah.
it makes me-
All right, stop. Find somebody else you haven't spoken to. There should be at least one more rotation. 2 more.
Oh.
Oh, you're gonna walk and not walk?
Yeah.
Okay.
Here, you two, so we can.
They already did it. Oh, okay.
There you go. All
They
right.
already did it.
They're dating. What are you doing?
They can't go twice.
What is the next step in life you're waiting for?
Oh.
Like when you finally go, like what is it that you're anticipating next to happen? You know, there's always that next step that everybody I think is waiting for. What is it?
To be settled in our marriage
Mhm.
and to
This future, like this summer, and be like, house. Here are the things that I don't know about that would like to happen soon is like, advanced in
next
career
step,
and like children.
By,
So I think that's that.
Oh, sorry.
I'm trying to figure out what range.
Yeah.
So I think that's
Yeah.
those are the three.
I was actually
Are ya?
about the kids being
Oh, baby fever. It's like it's weird. It's like baby and puppy fever at the same time.
Yes, no, I don't know what I want more. Like, I feel like a puppy is maybe just like an excuse. But then, like, I'll have a puppy and a baby to take care of. That just seems like a mistake. Like, in the end, it's like more money.
But once
Like
you get
what?
trained, puppies take care of themselves. mostly.
Yeah, that is true.
Until you let them out at lunchtime to the bathroom.
Oh, no, our dogs, they
Like,
can
a
stay out all
coworker every
day.
day. Every day at lunch.
Okay. 2 more questions. So find new partner. Yeah, I haven't talked to you yet, so I think. Yeah, good. Okay. All right. Name. And it's funny that we were actually talking about this earlier. Name one of your biggest pet peeves.
Chewing with your mouth open?
Okay.
not finishing the
And
job.
mine.
Like, sweep them up early, but then leave them.
Yeah, every
I-
time
Room
I
out.
went off once, when I left Soleil.
I think my
Or like
biggest pet peeve
somebody's
is people
smoking,
that
like,
complain
like,
that
we're like
obvious
walking in
solutions
the
to
crowd
the
and
problem,
right
but-
front.
Yes!
Yeah.
Yes.
And I know that that's me sometimes. It probably is, but
I would say.
that drives me up the wall.
Oh, you've got to do something.
I'll add that. When people ask for your advice and you give it and
Things
then
that
they say
people
something
do, like,
completely opposite.
Like, for instance,
Why bother?
Why bother? Why'd you ask? Why'd you ask? You were doing your own thing.
Should I wear the red or the blue? Red. Okay, I'll wear the blue.
She's like, we're excited.
Yeah.
I'm totally.
Yeah. Yeah.
What
I
is
had
the
a
one that
woman.
you're talking about? Because I feel like you might want that one too.
Oh, when people ask for your advice and then you give them advice and they do the exact opposite of the advice that you gave them. Like,
Right.
should I wear the red one or the blue one? And you say the blue one. They're like, I come to feeling the red one.
It just helps me figure out what one I really wanted.
For the record, she was the one that
I'm
said
the
it.
one
It was
that
not
brought
me.
That's that one over there. She's like, Mom, should I wear this one or that one?
Don't you
I'll
throw
say
me
this
under the
one.
bus right
Okay,
now.
I'll wear that one.
Don't you throw me under the bus right now. But yeah, no.
Also, when people leave like lights on all over the house,
Yes.
I don't like that.
Sorry.
And when like I have to lock the door as soon as I get in the house, like,
Sorry.
it being unlocked right now is like I'm having a heart attack.
I'll go lock it as soon as we're
Okay.
done.
it always me when he
So-
locks the car at Dad's. Because I'm like, we don't lock cars around here.
Yeah.
Oh, your dad's house?
Yeah.
So this pet peeve, one of my pet peeves are people that have obvious solutions to their issues but refuse to accept them. Happened to me today while I was working at the student recreation center handing out like cap and gowns for graduates, and this non-traditional woman, I get it. She's like, I'm non-traditional. I don't fit into a lot of the students. Are you really gonna make me stand in this 45-minute line to grab my cap and gown? I was like, yes, ma'am. It's every person graduating has to stand in this line to get a cap and gown. I'm sorry. It is what it is. She goes, well, I'm not walking in. Okay, well, you can stand in this line for 45 minutes, or you cannot go to your graduation. Your call. She's like, this is absurd. I'm not walking. And she walked out. And I was like, I have a feeling you came in here wanting to complain about something. Because I get it, it's a long line that you were not anticipating, but anyway. I was like, you have 2 solutions here. She picked
She's
one.
actually never been to a graduation.
Yeah.
Yeah, it takes 3 hours.
Yeah, you're gonna wait in a longer line than that just to
No,
go out to get your
my
stuff.
guess is she's going to show up tomorrow and grab her cap and gown. So.
Yeah, it was fine.
Thank you. All right, last question. Switch partners one more time.
Maybe like
It'll be-
original partners?
Original partners, yeah,
Okay.
that'll work.
That worked out
You're
great.
right.
Yeah.
Original partner.
Alright, so on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being total control and 0 being no control,
Oh.
how much control do you need over your life to be happy?
0. Totally fine.
With a 1 and a bro.
I'm just kidding.
I'd
Yeah.
say like
Zero, no
6%.
control.
0 is no control, 10
Yeah.
control.
Probably
Like that.
Yeah, probably
Zero
probably
is no
nine.
control.
It is.
Yeah.
It
Depending on
is.
the
This is purposeful, I
situation.
promise.
Yeah.
First, right now,
I would just,
say
I would like to know.
eight or
I'm
nine.
close to
Yeah.
eight.
Okay.
One
I
more.
like my schedule.
And then I want to know.
as well.
I always schedule out time to get sick next week.
Yeah.
One and a one,
Yeah.
two?
I understand.
We
I
butt heads because it's fine. You know, it is what it is.
And things
But
are intense, so like.
she needs more than
Yes.
and that
Yes.
I want you to have more control because I don't
And those
like
pens that
you
have
have
the
control
eraser, they don't really erase.
No.
That doesn't work.
I think
So
maybe
erase.
it's lower than
Yeah, I'm with you.
It's
a
right.
healthy
I
amount.
think it's
I'm
too
good
high
with
for
some
me.
things. Some things I'm
What,
just kind of
22?
muscle.
Yeah, like the plan spot daily.
Yeah.
I don't have to do it.
This
Like
all-
that.
Yeah, it is. It really is. Totally understand. All right, thank you for speed dating. I hope you know a little bit more about some of the folks in the room. Maybe what not to do around them, technically, or
That one is very good.
anytime I ask for advice, I'm going to make sure that I go with it, especially if Angel's around.
Oh.
So I promise there is purpose for that activity. If you guys would, if you have your Bibles with you, or if you have your phones, or whatever it is you're using, go ahead and turn to Luke chapter 9. Yeah, Luke chapter 9. And what I want you guys to do, here, you just take one, that's it. Is you might need a writing utensil.
Yes.
Need something to write with. Me too. Thank you. Alright, what I want you to do very quickly before we get started, under deny yourself, I want you out, and I can read the questions out loud again. But I'm going to read a couple questions and just jot down a couple of the things that you mentioned. This does not necessarily mean these are things that you need to deny, but it's things that we're going to want to think about later after we kind of discuss for a little bit. So, some of the questions, what were 3 of your most favorite activities?
Wait, can you go over the instructions again?
Sure. Under
We're just doing deny yourself.
just under deny yourself. You're just
And
going to
we're
jot.
just writing all the answers that we,
You don't have to write all of them. Just jot down a couple of the things that you mentioned while we were answering questions.
even if we don't think it applies to deny yourself.
Sure.
We're just writing the answers.
Yes.
Then you're gonna explain it after.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
3 of your most favorite activities. And like I said, you don't have to jot down all of them. Just a couple things that come to mind immediately. 3 of the people closest to you. Most precious possessions. Your next step in life. Pet peeves. That one's really just fun. And the amount of control you get over your life. And we'll come back to those in just a little bit.
She's got to know. She's like, I need to know.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at an 8 right now, so. Do you mind controlling me?
Oh, you want total control of this moment?
I don't want control of the moment, I just want to. I asked him like,
Go
I
in
asked him like
and-
10 times this week, what are we doing on Thursday night? What are we doing? Not one word. I have no idea what we're doing. I don't know where this is going, guys.
Okay, if you're done writing or if you're still thinking, it's okay, you can jot down stuff.
We're all in the van together.
We are all in the van together. If you will turn to verses, we're going to read through verses 23 through 27 again. Remember, this is in Luke 9. And this is right after Peter confesses Jesus is the Christ, and then Jesus tells them, foretells of his death for the first time. And so they're kind of going, wait, you're going to what? That doesn't make any sense. I thought you were going to come build this great earthly kingdom. And then he says this to them, if anyone would come after me, let him deny himself, take up his cross daily, and follow me. For whoever would save his life will lose it, but whoever loses his life for my sake will save it. For what does it profit a man if he gains the whole world and loses or forfeits himself? For whoever is ashamed of me and my words, of him will the Son of Man be ashamed. But when he comes in his glory, and the glory of the Father and of the holy angels. But I tell you truly, there are some standing here who will not taste death until they see the kingdom of God. So, thinking, not necessarily yet in terms of what you wrote down, but just in general, and we talked about this some just a little bit. And we talked about some last week as well, but I kind of really wanted to start to hit home and to really let it stew for a bit. What does it mean to deny yourself? What is Jesus asking? First off, what do you think Jesus was asking the disciples to do?
Deny yourself of your personal desires, what you want. Say you wrote down money, you're rich. Deny yourself that.
That's good.
I kind of find it encouraging because they knew that he was this great prophet, that he was performing miracles, that he was this awesome man. Even if at this point they still didn't quite understand that he was the Messiah, he was a great guy. He was better than them, so to speak. And he was saying, quit being you, start being me. So it was encouraging. To me, it sounds encouraging to say, quit being lesser, start being more. Like, be greater. You can be greater than this.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that other part about dying, that's a different story.
No, there's truth in that though. There is. We know that he has our best intentions in mind. Accepting that is very difficult in certain circumstances, but that's true. Yeah. Anybody else on that?
The wheels are turning.
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking that means all the stuff that we wrote down, like, leave it behind. You can never run again. See you, Sean.
I think it's more like if I
Like
asked
our
you to give it
plans.
up, could you?
Yeah, like this is not a point. Like, these things aren't the point.
Because, for instance, running, like for some people, things happen that really seems like a horrible thing at the time, but then later they end up realizing that they really grew from it. Like, I don't want to say that because but like for instance, Bree and Chat, how they lost Chat's sister and how they still talk about how horrible it was, of course, but look at how much they learned from it. I think that's kind of how I take it. Is to deny yourself because think of the stuff that I may ask you to give up for me.
Yeah, and that's like everything that we wrote down
Yeah.
and more.
Yeah.
And I can speak to that because of the whole running thing. I was running when my heart gave out. And it was a Wednesday. I was running my PR race around the world marathon that Sunday or that Saturday. And I started off during a Wednesday. It was almost like you're going home, you're sitting around there doing it. And so I had to give up my passion. I was training for a marathon. That was my PR race. And so, but through that, I had something else. Like I found yoga and I found, the Christian perspective training and I found this increase in my faith and I found all of he was taking a lesser thing and giving me a greater thing, which I didn't do good on this one. But if he's asking us to give up something, it's not because he takes pleasure in saying, I'm just gonna pluck this one and pluck that one, but you gotta make space for the greater thing.
He's not necessarily, and all of you guys are right, to kind of sum up what you said already. He's not necessarily asking us to give up all of our possessions and deny everything we own, everything we do and we enjoy. He's given us those desires for a reason. But it's really more of a mindset. Are you willing to give these things up in order to do what I'm calling you to do? And so the way I think about it, by denying yourself, is kind of giving up total control of those things. So, sure, if running is still a thing, like you're still allowed to run, you're still allowed to enjoy those things. But when it's to the point where it becomes what you want to have control over rather than spending time with the Lord or doing something else. So if the Lord calls you to do something, you're planning to go, running is one of your favorite things to do, and you're planning to do it at 6 o'clock after you get home from work. And the Lord's like, hold up, I have something else I need you to do. Are you still going to go run, or are you going to do what you think the Lord's calling you to do? You have to be willing to give up that control over your time and over those things you enjoy doing when the Lord asks you to move. And that is hard for a lot of us to do. And I know in my life, one thing that I had given up kind of post-college, once I got to seminary, I'll be frankly honest, I love playing video games. I play computer games all the time. I play PlayStation games all the time. It was my getaway from the rest of the world, get lost in something else. And it got to a point where it was a competitive thing in my life. So like, I played competitive video games for a couple of years. And so at 6 or 7 o'clock, like I had to be on the computer, I had to have good internet, people had to leave me alone, and I was playing my game, and I was competing against others. And I realized that I was blocking off time of my day and not even thinking about what the Lord may have wanted me to do during that time. I wasn't even going to Him to ask Him those questions. That was something that I had complete control over. I was going to go, I was going to play games, I was going to enjoy it. I gave that up. And I think of other moments like, when Bree was talking about her book obsession and how she was obsessed with reading, and how it's not necessarily a bad thing. Like, reading's a good thing. It's an enjoyable thing. But it became something that it had taken complete control over her life. She was always reading. And she realized that she was doing more reading than she was considering what the Lord wanted her to do. So that was something that she had to be willing to give up. And as we've seen, she still reads from time to time. There's stuff she reads a small group, she reads other things, but she's allowing the Lord to use her passion for reading to glorify Him rather than just for enjoying time with herself. And so that's kind of what he's asking here. One other thing I wrote down, with you guys, like the whole football game situation, that is such a testament to the Lord's will. And you don't have to give up your joy for football. You don't. But you had to be willing to give the Lord that time back and those finances back, and to kind of release some of that control and give it back to Him. And that's huge. That's awesome.
So that was always the biggest thing. Or once we got to talking about it was, hey, if it was an early game, we'd get up 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, shoot down to Tallahassee, watch the game, come back. We were tired the next day. We'll just church next week. But we'd never do that for football. It's cheap. But yeah, and then it got me to thinking about the money. I mean, not just the upfront, but every trip with the expense of every trip that we took. And then after seeing that video, it really got me like, how much did you put in the office there? How much did you put in the tithes and stuff like that? Or just church price, religious. That is true, and it really opened my eyes a lot of how much time and money I've really dedicated to this particular thing. It was nice. Because all during the week I'd be constantly thinking about the coming weekend, cutting back on doing this, that, and the other, to make sure I had money for the weekend. And it was amazing how much control it really did have over me. It wasn't just that one day. literally the whole week planning it out and getting everything planned ahead, so it was, yeah, that was quite an experience.
I originally wanted to get married in October. We got married in March instead.
But that was
Because it was football season.
Yeah. I knew it would be way too stressful to try and talk me into having a wedding during
During
football
football season.
season.
And it's sad, and it's, I guess in a way, to me, it's a little embarrassing about how much I got involved with it. Because yeah, I mean, I would swing a fit if somebody playing someone football on a home game, and there's a way games and then.
Mm-hmm.
But like when her brother was getting married, I was very adamant that if it's a home game, I'm not making you the fronts.
Mm-hmm.
And looking back now, it's just sad that I let it control me. You know. Yeah, and to think that you know, a simple video or whatever could really open my eyes and see that I guess it was what I was missing.
Mm-hmm.
So that's good.
Yeah, and for some of us, like our kind of some of this question, denying yourself means denying control over your own personal identity. So, like we are now asked to identify with Christ. Like that's how we should be identified. You know, and for you, and same thing for me, it still is an issue in my life. Like I know that when people see me, they think, you know, during certain times, he's going to want to talk about George Southern football. You know, that's immediately what comes to mind. Is he's going to want to talk about such and such. And me starting to let go of some of that and let go of my wanting or my desire to know everything about George Southern football and to know everything about the players and the recruitment, and you know, that begins to fill my thoughts, and that comes from the outflow of my mouth. You know, and that's what people start to identify me as. The more time I start to deny that and spend more time with the Word, the more my relationship with Jesus and things that He's done in my life start to come out of my mouth, and that becomes my identity. You know, and that just is that shift of mindset. And I think for some of us, the reason I had you guys write all these things down is because as you're looking at them and you're answering some of these questions, the things that you enjoy the most, the people you enjoy the most, the next step in life, a lot of that you want to control. A lot of that identifies who you are, and especially the whole next step in life part. I know for me and for a lot of folks, whatever that next step you have in mind is where a lot of your actions are going to lead you to do. So the steps that it's going to take to get to that place, you know. And that eats up a lot of brain power and it eats up a lot of thought. And sometimes you're not willing to give some of those things up. The Lord asks you to do something else, you know. And that was really hard for me because I wanted to graduate in 3 years from seminary. And when Jesus called me to Africa, I was like, this is going to mess everything up. And here I am, 5 years later, still taking classes, you know. In hindsight, I probably spent thousands of dollars more on my tuition, you know, so it even cost me more money, which I think is ridiculous. But at the same time, I realized the Lord did that for a reason. I'm here, I'm married, I have a wonderful wife, I have a great ministry with the church. And so, in hindsight, I'm going, okay, I get it. I understand why you asked me to give that up and give up control. Because I was a kid that bragged about having perfect attendance and great grades, you know, and I had to give all that up. So I was like, it's not in my character to just stop school halfway through and go do something crazy. This is not me, you know. I had to give that up, and it wasn't who I was. And I kind of took control over that again when I got back into town. But I realized that it was a big part of who I was. It was the hardest decision I've had to make in a very, very long time. And realizing that my identity was wrapped up in that, I don't know what I call it, kind of like perfect child syndrome, achievement, you know, based mentality. And learning to let that go has led to laziness in some areas, which I need to rein back in. But I realized that that's what the Lord was asking me to do. Yeah. And so it was a good thing, ultimately. It was just really, really, really hard to do at first. So let's continue reading. We're going to go back over to verse 23. So if anyone would come after me, let him deny himself, take up his cross daily, and follow me. So moving on to that second portion, take up your cross. How is that, and why is that different from denying yourself? What does this process of taking up your cross signify?
called that I used to not do. Take up is an action. So one, you're stopping something, and then you're doing something. And I think, for me, the whole take up your cross is to do something you don't want to do. I don't want to take up my cross. I don't want to die. I don't want to do all these inconvenient things. But that is what I'm being called to do. I am being called to stop in the middle of my day and pray for somebody, to stop while I'm already running late, to help somebody find their cell phone, or, to do all of these things that are out of my way. We were talking about this last night. We saw the videos, finally watched the video for David Blatt, and somehow we got to talking about how David was saying how we're not giving God that which has cost us nothing. We're just, giving what we have extra, and we're really not feeling that. We're not feeling what it's costing us to give something to God. To me, that's what take up your cross means. Is we're just doing the stuff that we're happy to do. We're just doing the stuff that comes easily, naturally, and then we're really not feeling anything in our mind. That's not what Jesus did. He didn't just give us a happy life. He didn't just have a happy life. He suffered. So if I'm not feeling the depths of this, I'm not sacrificing anything then.
Amen.
I think she answered it. I was just thinking that was an action. Like deny ourselves to stop doing something.
Yeah. And I will, I'm not disagreeing with that thought. I'm challenging that thought. Because to me, the next two words, and follow me, are the action verbs. Take the cross is action. But I think, and she was hinting toward it, that the taking up of the cross is kind of a mental action. Because he wasn't telling them physically go grab a cross and follow me, but like he says in Luke 14, a couple chapters later, when he's talking about the cost of following him, the cost of discipleship, he says in verse 27, whoever does not bear his own cross and come after me cannot be my disciple. And he's not necessarily talking about a physical cross here. He's talking about the willingness to go and die to self, to give up some of these things. He's not saying necessarily you're going to die with me, but he's saying you need to be willing to walk with me, and the chances are that you could. There's a chance that we could ask you to sacrifice your life for this. And so in my take from the passage, and kind of my understanding, is this taking up of your cross is having the willingness to do whatever it is that God wants us to do. So he's not saying you have to give up your favorite things. You have to give up running. But he's saying you have to be willing to give this up for me when I ask you to do it. Be willing to sacrifice some of these things. They can't get in the way of the ministry I want to do for you. And so for me, that's kind of a mindset. And so I think looking at the things that we wrote down in that first section, what are some steps that we can take or things that we can think about that can help bring us to that mindset that, you know what, I do cherish these things and I love these things, but I understand that his will is more important. How do we get ourselves to that place that we're willing to accept that?
I think being a parent has really cleared a lot of that stuff.
Yeah.
Because you find yourself saying, this hurts me, and it hurts you. And it's the whole, I don't ask you to clean your room because it makes me happy. It's because it's good for you. And so it really does places things in perspective. And if I can get my children to understand that what I'm asking them to do is for their benefit, not because it brings me pleasure to see them suffer.
Right.
It would just be so much easier.
Mhm.
So from that perspective, for me, it's easier. It's like a light bulb goes off to say, if I can just make myself do what God is calling me to do, I know that there's a greater purpose in that. Does it make me willing sometimes, and it doesn't make it any easier, but at least I know where I'm going. I know. And in the end, I might not know exactly what it looks like, but I know it's going to be better. You
Mhm.
know, like there's one for me. He knows better than I do.
Mhm.
Trust me.
I'm a little bit lost.
How can I help you?
Well, I'm still kind of stuck on taking up the cross and what that means.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, are you talking about taking up a burden? That doesn't make sense to me.
In my mind, I understand it's like accept your responsibilities. Like whatever you're being asked to do, whatever that may be. Take ownership of it.
Oh.
And it's a commitment. So when he asked that of his disciples, it was essentially them, you know, if they would say, yes, Lord, I'll take up my cross. It's their commitment to him going, I understand that by me putting my faith in you, this could very well lead to rejection and death. So I'm willing to deny myself, sacrificing all of those things, and also admitting that this road might not be easy. It doesn't necessarily mean that everything is going to be bad. He's not necessarily asking me to plant that cross and get crucified next to him, but having that willingness to do so if that's what it comes to.
You're not taking a pledge, like I'm pledging a covenant.
Could be. You know, we don't, I guess we do that in a way when we put our faith in the Lord, you know. We say, Jesus, I'm willing to follow you. I think a lot of times when we are new believers, we don't know what that means until we walk through passages like this and we go, oh boy, that's the commitment I need, you know. And that's when you'll hear a lot of people tell their own story, my own story as well. You know, I got saved in high school, and then in college, when somebody really kind of walked me through this, it was like, this commitment meant a lot more than I thought it did when I first made it, you know. And you kind of learn that along the way. And so it's learning all over again to be willing to give up a lot of those things, you know, that we thought, oh, well, it's fine if I do this, right? I mean, I believe in Christ, I'm going to heaven, it's all good. And then a couple years later, he goes, okay, you're still not really getting the picture. And that's what he's doing with his disciples right now. He's going, you guys thought that I was going to come and be this wonderful, awesome person and save the world and have this earthly reign. No. I'm going to die, and you're going to have to come with me if you want to follow me on this train, you know. And they're going, whoa, okay. So what does this mean for us? And obviously, like I said, for a lot of people overseas, that literally means they are putting their life on the line by putting their faith in Jesus. And we aren't necessarily. So we're kind of looking at this through a little bit different lens, going, okay, what does this look like for us then? You know, what sort of things are we going to be asked to give up? What sort of commitments are we making in Christ to fulfill our agreements with Him and taking up our cross? Does that help any?
Yes, it does.
Okay. Anything else to add?
I was thinking when you said, when you asked that question, like, what does it mean exactly? Is it a covenant? And you're like, it could be, it's more like this is what could happen in the future, like, you know, you yourself up for this. And then you were giving an example, I was thinking, like, oh, it's kind of like marriage. Like, you get into it and you think, this would be great. Like, I mean, I know that, like, something could happen, or, like, you know, we could have some troubles, but it'll be fine. Like, I'm totally excited about this. And then it's like, deny yourself. Wait, what do you mean you have to compromise? And like, what do you mean you have to talk about money? What do you mean you have to, like, you know, you don't want to go to dinner with my friends or something? And then take your cross. Like, are you willing to give those things up? Like, do you have somebody who's going to keep you accountable? Are you having regular conversations about this? It just made me laugh when you said that. That's why I was laughing. I was like,
Oh, yeah.
oh my goodness.
Yeah, it is. It really is.
I mean, it's more than that, but I mean,
I mean, mean, and
Who you're talking about?
and Jesus' relationship with the church is a marriage.
Yeah.
It is, and it is very much that. Are you willing to sacrifice these things and trust me to follow me? Yeah. And I said that at the altar, and am now understanding what those commitments mean. You know? So
And you've been warned a couple years, just
Yeah.
like you were saying, like.
yeah, you know, it's a hard thing to ask and to do from both parties. So question number 3, last question of our content portion. Then, and I think this one's a little more self-explanatory. What does it mean to follow Jesus? I self-explanatory, but it's something we learn over the years. But
It's learning to live as a Christian, learning what a real Christian is. It's, especially in our lifestyle, it's very easy to be tricked into think that you are a Christian. You know, just because you have asked for forgiveness and asked Jesus in your heart, it doesn't mean you're following Jesus. It just means you've found a Savior, but then you're going to live your life denying His teachings. You know, so I know for me, it was a new awakening, and I was not following Jesus by any means. I thought I was fine and safe, but recently, definitely convicted that there are serious changes that need to happen in my life to really meet the definition of a Christian.
I think one thing that's interesting lately is the number of people I've come across. I've heard my dad mention it a few times with some of his friends. I've never actually met some of these people until recently. Are those that believe once saved, always saved. And I find that to be interesting because if you talk to them, they're like, oh yeah, I was baptized and saved and all when I was a kid. And I mean, they live this horrible lifestyle, but they think that because they went through, I guess, the routine or whatever back in the day, that they're golden for the rest of their life or whatever. Not mine. And yeah, and those people I've tried to talk to a couple of them. I just don't really want to hear anything about it because they like their lifestyle. They're like, God wants me to be happy. And I was speaking with somebody earlier, one of my coworkers, and he brought this thing about, well, God just wants us all to be happy. I thought, well, a serial killer really gets off on killing people. He's happy or she's happy. I said, does that make it right? And he's like, well, that's different. I'm like, really? Not the way he thinks.
right.
So yeah, that's I don't know. That's one thing that's really troubled me lately is and I don't know who else said it to you, but for some reason it just kept popping up in my mind was what was the whole thing, but if you're gonna follow, Jesus, you got to live the lifestyle. It's not always gonna be roses. There are times it's gonna be tough, but it's not always gonna be tough. But you've got commitments you got to make, changes you got to make. But yeah, just because you said, the prayer or whatever years ago, doesn't, I don't think solidify your place in heaven.
And I think with that, especially with that circumstance, it comes down a lot to people's definition of salvation and what that experience is like. I think there are a lot of people who have gone through an altar call and never truly met the Lord, and think that because they were emotional and they cried and somebody prayed over them that they have a relationship with Jesus. But pretty good and well if you have a relationship with the Lord, and I think it's people's understanding of that, it kind of skews that for them. And that's hard to deal with because you don't want to look at them and tell them, no, but that's not our job to judge them and their salvation. But the only thing you can really do is encourage them, that there is life change that follows being saved by the Lord and having a relationship with if there's no fruit from that, that is the evidence of their relationship with God. I mean, it's scriptural, it says it. So, who knows? But yeah, that's a difficult conversation. And I see where that ties in with taking people that just aren't willing to do that. You know, and following Jesus, he follows this up with the in verses 25 and 26. He says, "For what does it profit a man if he gains the whole world and loses and forfeits himself?" You know, that's a reflection back on denying himself and taking up his cross. What's the point of gaining all these things that you want so desire if you're going to end up losing your life anyway? And so, you know, that old adage, you can't take anything with you to heaven, is kind of scriptural. Comes from this passage, but the reality of that is, you know, if you truly believe that Christ is your Savior and you believe that God has a particular will, then the accumulation of great things here on this earth should be of significantly less importance to you when that relationship continues. But here's why I think that the first 2 points, deny yourself and take up your cross, are a mindset. It's because of verse 26. He says, because this is kind of his summation of those verses, he says, "For whoever is ashamed of me and my words, of him will the Son of Man be ashamed, when he comes in his glory and the glory of the Father and of the holy angels." And he's talking about the second coming. He's talking about when he returns. Anyone who is ashamed of him and his teaching, he will also be ashamed of. And that's a mindset. If you're ashamed of something, it means that you're physically taking on some sort of keep on the read the word shame, that's not what I'm looking for. But yeah, guilt or embarrassment. Yeah, thank you. In what it means to follow the Lord. Appreciate it. That's one of her pet peeves, when I can't finish the word she's looking for. You're so much better at it than I am.
Yeah, I'm like, what's this word? And he's like, I don't know. I'm like, try. Say words out loud. I'm gonna go crazy. I need to think of it.
He stopped what it says.
Yeah, what's this?
So he says essentially he's talking about us denying him denying us. And I don't think it's been much more prone than it has in the last couple of years with Christian faith being so in the media, with justice issues and gender identities and this, that, and the other. Realizing that he has called us to understand certain things and to have faith and trust in him. There are certain things he says about our lifestyle and the lifestyles of others that if we truly believe and walk with him, those are things that we can't be ashamed of. That's really hard for us to say out loud in public to certain people, to their faces. And I'm not telling you that, I'm not making any specific statements here, but in those circumstances where somebody is saying or doing something contrary to what we believe, those are moments that God is kind of looking at us going, okay, what are you going to do? You know, these are the moments that I am testing you. I'm testing your faith in me. Do you trust me to deliver you from this moment? Do you trust that what I'm saying and what I'm doing is worth more than your guilt or your embarrassment or your shame? You know? Peter denied him 3 times. He was like, of course, Lord, I'm not going to deny you. And he's 3 times before the rooster crowed. That means. So that means very, very soon. He said that the night before he did it, and that very next morning, before the rooster even crowed, he denied Jesus 3 times. Because circumstances happened he didn't see coming, and then all of a sudden he was freaking out and was like, "This isn't what I thought it was going to be. No, I don't know that guy. He's crazy." And what I do love about God is that he is faithful to redeem us in those situations. He gave Peter exactly 3 chances right after that to again reaffirm his faith. So he's willing to give us those second and third and fourth chances. But the point is his command is to not be ashamed of the life that he has called us to. And sometimes that means giving up some of the things we love. It means being open about, yeah, you know what? I gave up my football season tickets. This is why. Because it's something the Lord has called me to do, and this is how I've seen him work in my life. This is why I gave up my unbelievable love for reading. I do still read, and I do still read books, but I realize that he's called me to more than that. And I had to give that up, and that's why. And this is why I stopped playing video games all the stinking time. And even though I was good at them and was winning money and free computer gear, I gave it up because it was it was a waste of his time, which should also be a concern. I was not using my life wisely. Freudian slip, sorry. My wife.
Well, that's another thing too. I think some people misunderstand is that taking something away from God, or don't really know what I'm trying to do. It doesn't always have to be something bad like drugs, alcohol, whatever.
And this is
It
the thing
can
we
be-
go to usually in
Yeah.
conversation.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
people look at that and say, oh, well, at least I'm not an alcoholic. Well, one's not any better than the other, in his eyes. You're still going down the wrong path, like with, gaming or like simple football. Some people look at, oh, well, what was the harm in that on Saturday? See, look at the big picture,
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so that's what it means to follow Jesus. Deny yourself, take your cross, and then do what He's called you to do. What He's telling you, saying, "Follow me wherever I go." Might be crazy. I'm gonna end up on a cross. You might not. Let's see, I'm sure we're getting crucified here in the U.S., but there are things He's gonna ask us to do that we're not gonna want to do. That's just the reality of the situation. But it's our faith in Him and our faith in His plan that assures us that it's what's best for His kingdom. It really does not matter if I am there to watch Jerusalem in their first national championship. It's going to be great. I'm going to be super excited. But the salvation of one single person is infinitely more important than watching the English championship. And those are the things that I have to begin to get into perspective. It's much easier said than done, which is why I've had some of us write some of these things down. And just begin thinking about it. I'm not saying, this is not me saying you have to get rid of them. It's not me saying all of these things you have to forsake. But there may come a moment in time where He may ask you to change your mindset about some of these things, or about some of your plans, or about some of your favorite things, or even favorite people, because people go crazy. We know this. And you may expend more energy trying to rein them back in when God has other plans for you. And that's hard to do, especially when they're loved ones. I've seen people that have spent so much time and energy trying to repair relationships that I don't necessarily think the Lord wanted them to repair. It was not their job to repair. Put it that way. And so this isn't just about material things. It can be about people. It can be about dreams, all those different things. And so willingness to be aware of what God is calling us to do at all times. So as we finish, one thing I want you to do is we're going to stop for just a moment, kind of pray about this. I want you to stop and think, read over some stuff you've written down. And then I want you to write down under Follow Jesus, if you're ready. Some of us may not even be at this point. I know that I still have things I need to think through. But if there are things that you think the Lord is calling you to do immediately, I want you to jot those down. There are things that you just think, this might be a discussion I need to have with X, Y, or Z. Or things that I may need to ask help for, or things that I may need to talk to an accountability partner for. I want you to jot those down. I'm going to give you guys about 2 or 3 minutes. Just kind of stop, pray. If you need to read over the passage again, or if you want to look at your notes, do that. And then if you have something to write it down. If you don't, that's totally cool too. I'm not forcing you guys to write anything down and share it out in the open. So just think about that, but I want you guys to really reflect on that for yourself. in this so you finish up because I absolutely love practicality, and I'm a firm believer in not leaving small groups without putting something into action. What I want you to do, if you have something in mind or something that has been laid on your heart as we've been talking about it, things that you need to focus on or things you need to consider your mindset about, I want you to text someone, could be your spouse or someone you're close to, your mom, your dad, a accountability partner, and just say something like, hey, I need to share something with you later. Because that's going to force you to have that conversation. Because it's way too easy to say, oh yeah, I'll do it, and then the second you and your kids get home, ball game. Or the second you go and turn on Netflix or whatever, you forget about it, you don't do anything about it. So text someone before you leave, if you have something in mind. If you don't understand, you might need more time to think about it. Just say, hey, I need to share something with you later. And it will force you to at least have that conversation to say, so for me, I'll go ahead and give you an example. I'm probably going to text my wife and my roommate, Scuba. Something that I've been convicted of is my desire for rest. I studied a couple months ago the importance of having a Sabbath and getting rest. Now, I've kind of taken it to an extreme where I'm like, it'd probably be better for me to take a 45-minute nap right now than to do X, Y, and Z. And I realize where that's hurting both me and my relationship with my wife and my work. And so I need to have a conversation with somebody about that, about really being purposeful with my rest. Is this something I really need, or am I making excuses because I want to nap? So that is something that I'm going to text somebody. So it doesn't have to be like,
That's
I'm
so
quitting
interesting.
alcohol, you know, but
I didn't know that. I'm doing a study on Sabbath right now.
I don't know.
I
It got me thinking about it again. So, anyway, so that's what I will be texting to my wife and my roommate, my former roommate from seminary, that I want to help them keep me accountable to that. So if you have a phone, do it now. I'll give you a couple minutes. If you don't want to text anybody right at this moment, you don't have to. But that is my encouragement to you. I'm going to pray, and then if you want to pretend that you're playing games on your phone and text somebody, you can do that.